Have you ever thought about someone finding out your secrets, reading your text messages, and then learning something new about you? And what if this was not just a close one, but your own mother? My name is Miranda, and I found myself in a terribly awkward situation. I am sure you have no idea what happened to me. Our family consists of two people, my mother and me. My dad left us when my mom was pregnant with me. I never saw him, and we did not discuss this topic at home. Mom felt offended and did not even allow me to think about him. And I was always wondering who he was, what he did, how he laughed, what color his eyes were. But my mom's desire not to speak of him was above all my interest, and I also decided not to raise this issue myself. The years passed and I got older. My favorite hobby was watching TV shows. I spent all my free time in front of the computer and watched the new soap operas with great enthusiasm. My mom always joked at me that sometimes I behaved like a retired grandma. One day, my close friend messaged me. She said that there was a new series with my favorite actor Kevin Lucky. I was in all of his fan clubs, tenderly kept clippings of his face from magazines, watched all his interviews, and every time I was again convinced how talented and smart he was. I also had a secret electronic diary in which I poured out all my feelings and experiences. Half of them were of course devoted to my unrequited feelings for Kevin. It was a diary that she would keep under a lock with a key and never show to other people. I was making a note about a new picture of my favorite actor when my mom suddenly entered the room without knocking, reminding me that I needed to take out the trash. I jumped up in surprise and forgot to close my diary and quickly ran out of the room. Who would have known that my mother would see my notes and find out about my love? Arriving back at the house, I immediately went up to my room. I bought popcorn and soda at the store, and I was getting ready to see the new soap opera, but my mom called me into the kitchen asking for help in preparing dinner. I started to cut up the vegetables, sometimes noticing her strange looks on myself. I couldn't continue like that, so I asked my mom what was the matter, to which she replied that she was simply tired and not in the mood. But I knew that the matter was completely different. From that day on, my mother was kind of not her usual self. She constantly asked me where I was, when I would be home, and bombarded me with work around the house and different errands. And it continued like that for several days until one day I came back home early and saw my own mother sitting at the computer in my room and reading my diary. To say that I was terribly ashamed is to say nothing. I blushed, then I turned pale, and I was about to burst into tears when suddenly anger overcame me, and I told my mom that she had no right to read my diary and personal notes. I went up to her and closed the laptop and demanded an explanation as to why she did it. My mom was sitting there silent when suddenly she began telling a story which shocked me completely. My mom said that she met my dad as a student. They fell in love and planned to get married, but his father was against the relationship. Since my mother was from an average family and my father's family was very, very rich. Dad did not fight for that relationship and just broke up with my mom, not knowing that she was already pregnant with me. And my mom didn't tell him anything either. They never saw each other again, but from the news she learned that my father had married a rich woman and they both had a son. And my favorite actor, Kevin Lucky, is that very son. My whole world turned upside down in one moment. I didn't know what to say. My mom said that all these years she was still angry and offended because her and my dad loved each other very much, and then he so easily abandoned her. So that's why she didn't want me to know anything about him. But after seeing my diary, my mom began to worry about my feelings because Kevin was technically my stepbrother, and who knew how things would turn out. So I had to find out the truth. I sat down on the bed and asked to be left alone. My thoughts were a mess and there was no answer. Kevin, that same Kevin from the TV, is my stepbrother? I've seen photos of his family many times, and for so many years I wanted to know who my dad is, but it turns out that he was always in my sight. I immediately went online and typed in my father's name. Hundreds of articles, different events, charities, business. He led an active social life. I found the address of his office building and decided to meet with him face to face. After getting dressed and leaving my bedroom, I saw my mother at the door. She just asked what I wanted to do. I honestly admitted that I wanted to see my father, because in recent years, all I wanted was to meet him, and I think I have every right to make this decision. My mom hugged me and said that she was glad to finally open up because it made her feel so much better. At the entrance to a large modern office building, I stood for several minutes at the entrance of a large modern office building, hesitating whether I should go in. But my curiosity got the better of me and I went inside. Going up to the office, the secretary asked to wait for my turn. When the time came, I walked into the office and saw him, my father. He said hi to me and then asked who I was and what I needed. I told him my story and I told him that I was his daughter. My father was sitting in a chair. Then he got up abruptly and then he did what I did not expect. He laughed loudly with a mockery. He laughed and could not stop. I felt so humiliated. This is not the kind of reaction I imagined. Then he calmed down and said that people like me come to him almost every week and everyone pretends to be his child just to get his money or be closer to his brilliant son. Then he threw me $10 on the table and said that this was the maximum he would give me for my acting. I did not expect such a turn. I just left, slammed the door, and really regretted that I had come. When I came home, I did not tell my mother everything that had happened. I simply said that the issue with my dad will never be raised in our house ever again. In my bedroom, I tore down all the posters of Kevin, threw away all the magazines and newspapers, and deleted my electronic diary. After seeing my father, I realized that I no longer wanted to have anything to do with either him or his son. So, my life goes on. I do the same things. I study, watch TV shows, go on evening walks with my mom, and we are very happy to be with each other. I'm not looking for the truth anymore. If you like this story, then give it a thumbs up and write us some comments down below. And don't forget to subscribe.
Hello everyone, my name is, Arnold. I had a very long nightmare where there was school, unemotional parents, Wilson the bully, a classmate named Emily, and a bus that drove us endlessly into the abyss. I pressed myself against the back of the seat, fearing that I would fall. The people around me were like shadows. But at the turn, the bus eventually began to move to the edge, fell off the cliff. We flew swiftly, and for a long time from the cliff, we were dangling from side to side like kittens, that at one moment I flew out through the broken window, and the bus flew on. It really hurt when I hit bumps and stones, and I screamed and woke up. Oh God, was that just a dream? This was a dream! How lucky it was that it was just a dream. People came running to my cry and tried to calm me down. One nice woman held me in close and whispered, Son, calm down, everything is fine. We are with you and are close. And the bearded man who was standing by the bed was so worried that with trembling hands and stroked my head and whispered, it's okay, Arnold. After a while, I looked around. It was a village house, simple and cozy. There were a woman and a man nearby. Their faces were so kind and a little familiar, I think. I asked carefully, where am I? And who are you? Then the woman burst into tears. Oh God, what's wrong with him? Doesn't recognize his parents. I've always told you, Joseph, be careful. He's still so little. I was shocked. Are these my parents? I apparently fell or hit my head, which knocked my memory off. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't remember my life, and the dream that I had at night seemed more realistic. But it too began to fog up and I couldn't remember the details. Mom brought me herbal tea and gingerbread cookies. My favorite, she said. The smell of ginger, the kind eyes of this woman, or rather my mother's, slowly began to return to my memory. But so far it was all in fragments. I recognized my massive wooden bed, a pillow stuffed with herbs, the smell of the room filled with freshness of the forest. I tried to get up and get dressed, but my mother wouldn't let me. I lay like that for a couple of days. When I felt better, my mother brought me clothes. It seemed alien and a little too big, and the shoes were definitely big, so I had to wear them with thick socks. Yes, there were many questions. Several days passed in this way. Poor mother did not leave my side, and in every possible way helped me to remember every corner of the house, every little thing. It was fun to remember my life again, to my questions of what happened to me. She said that the time would come to explain everything. So, in short, I got into trouble and partially lost my memory. I was not allowed outside the house at all. Mom told me that my name was Arnold Ruth. Her name was Mary, and my father was Joseph. We are a family of a gamekeeper in Kings Canyon National Park, California. Over time, my dad began to take me to see the park again. It was what I liked most in my life, the famous General Grant's Grove, Redwood Canyon. I began to slowly remember all the routes and places, although, to be honest, with difficulty. At home, my mother often asked me about the dream, and I listened carefully. And in the end, she laughed loudly that I was dreaming of an unthinkable fantasy. One day, my mother hurriedly ran home and asked to get the jam out of the basement. I was scared because I hadn't gone down there yet, but my mother took me there so confidently that I thought, oh, I probably did it 100 times before. Downstairs in the back room, I found a whole stash of different types of jam. Then, suddenly I heard the sound of a loud rumble of the hatch. Approaching it, I got surprised that it was closed. I was so scared. No matter how hard I tried, the hatch did not give in. Having lost all hope that I would be heard, I lay down on the steps and fell asleep there. There were some strange dreams again. I clearly saw the bully Wilson. He was chasing me again to beat me. Suddenly my father woke me up and took me on his arm and carried me onto the sofa. He was yelling at my mother for not looking after me. Mom asked for forgiveness and cried. She said that some people had come and asked to show a way out. She had to go on horseback for another hour in front of their car to guide them onto the highway. One day, I woke up in the middle of the night and did not find my parents. Frightened, I began to look for them in the yard and saw a dim light in the barn, the silhouettes of my parents. For some reason, I decided to eavesdrop on their conversation. From what I understood, they were talking about me. I tried to listen and made out just a few repeating words like, police, God, he doesn't remember anything. I won't give it to anyone. Then I accidentally stepped on a dry branch and gave myself away. My parents went out and took me to the house. They admitted that they were very worried about me having partial amnesia. I didn't know what to tell them. It seemed to me that I had begun to remember my life. Seeing the aged, but still the familiar face of my mother, I decided to calm her down and told enthusiastically how we nursed a deer called Bambi. We bandaged his damaged leg, fed him from the bottle. Mom beamed with joy. I told you he will remember. He will remember everything, my dear son. You will soon remember everything, and we will live happily again. 3 of us, and Dad, surprised, couldn't say anything. He just fiddled with his beard, repeating, yes, yes. There are miracles. I continued to recall. When the deer was brought to a goat, it immediately began to lick it. But Bambi was making loud noises for a long time, calling for its mother. And because hunger rules in this world, the deer eventually recognized the goat and began to drink its milk. All 3 of us laughed happily and drank herbal tea with gingerbread cookies. I haven't felt so good for a long time. Then a disaster struck. Yes, there was no other way to name it. As usual, I dreamed of all sorts of nonsense. I again was hiding from Fat Wilson in my house. It was dark and the searchlights of police cars were coming from the street. They spoke through the loudspeaker something like, "You're surrounded. Come out with your hands up. You are responsible for the boy's life." I repeat, you are responsible for the boy's life. Oh my God. This moron Wilson decided to lure me out of the house and beat me up this way. Yes. And he dragged the police into this. Although I realized that it was just a dream, I resented the stupidity of this fat Wilson. But after a moment, I woke up, and the spotlights and the policeman's voice were real. I did not have time to fully realize what was happening when the light turned on and my parents rushed to me. Mom was all in tears. She rushed to me and hugged me tightly, as if protecting me from the pack of wolves. Dad was shaking. He tried to drag my distraught mom away from me. Then Dad left us and shouted, "I'm going to the police," and ran out. Mom was out of her mind. She kept on repeating one thing, "I won't give up. I won't give it up for anything, son." I felt scared and cried. Clutching my mother, fear gripped me, and I waited for something terrible to happen. A couple of minutes later, police, doctors, random men and women burst into my room. My mother was dragged away by force and handcuffed. She desperately resisted and yelled, "Son, no! No, no!" My heart was breaking. Why did they grab her? I yelled, "Mom! Mom, don't leave me!" She grabbed one of the cop's hands and bit. He screamed in pain and then hit her head with a pistol. My mother fell and the door was covered in blood. I vomited and passed out. The nightmare began again, long and confusing. Then I somehow came to my senses. I automatically got out of bed and went to the bathroom, washed, put on clean clothes, and went to the kitchen. It was 7:30 a.m. My parents were sitting there drinking tea. Mom asked about my health. Dad raised his eyes from behind the newspaper and looked at me closely. Mom gestured for the maid to set my breakfast. We had breakfast in silence. I thanked them and got up from the table. Dad asked if I wanted something special because I had experienced so much terror and danger with these forest people. I told my parents my request. Yes, please, Mom and Dad, make sure that the court pardons Mr. and Mrs. Ruth for this act. Mom raised her eyebrows and said this was not just some mistake, but a real crime. To hide a child who had lost his memory and to suggest that he was their son? I looked at her carefully and continued. If you think that it's crazy to love someone else's child, to be ready to give your life for him, to throw yourself at an armed cop protecting your child is a crime, then the world is going in the wrong direction. Dad, I'll be downstairs in 5 minutes. Take me to these people. I want to quickly talk to my mom. She probably is going crazy without me. My biological dad nodded in agreement. Just a few days later, Mr. and Mrs. Ruth were released. We were together again. Mother Mary hugged me tightly. She did not want to let go for a long time and melted with happiness when I called her mom. I myself wanted to call her that. This was a kind, brave, caring woman. Such a strange story happened to me when my whole class was returning from a trip to Kings Canyon. The day was turning into night. Suddenly, the school bus got off the highway and we were quickly going down off the road. We were shaken and thrown up on each bump. It was so bad that some windows even shattered. I fell out and immediately lost consciousness. After driving like that for almost 300 meters, the driver was able to get the bus to the emergency site and soften the fall. It fell to one side. Fortunately, no one died. Everyone survived. These rescue services immediately arrived and everyone was evacuated to the city. In the craziness, they didn't recognize that I was missing until the next day. By then, the Ruths found me unconscious and picked me up. My mother, Mary, thought that I was a gift from God because a year ago she lost her son Arnold, who died of illness. She didn't want to take me back. Even when the police came looking for me, she hid me in the basement. You already know the rest of the story. If you like the story, then give it a thumbs up and leave us some comments. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel.